Recording in progress.
Welcome. I now call this meeting of the Somerville City Council to order. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the City Council may be conducted via remote participation. Please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on local access government channels and on the City of Somerville website and will be available for future review. Will the clerk please call the roll?
This is roll call. Councilor Mba. Present. Councilor Wilson.
Present.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Present.
Councilor McLaughlin. Councilor Burnley.
Present.
Councilor Said.
Here.
Councilor Strezzo.
Present.
Councilor Klingon.
Present.
Councilor Davis.
Here.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Here.
With 10 councilors present and 1 absent, we have a quorum.
And Madam Clerk, Councilor McLaughlin is on the way. He's just running a little behind. Pursuant to our Rule 32, let it be known that the City Council salutes the flag of the United States of America, and let us recall our oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth to the best of our abilities and understanding. We will begin this meeting with a moment of silence, and I'll ask if any councilors will wish to say a few words about any members of our community that we have lost. Okay, will everyone in the chamber who is able please rise for a moment of silence? You may be seated. Welcome. It's always nice to have a full room here. We have a number of items this evening, colleagues, that we're taking out of order. We will start with a citation, which is 10-1, and then do our grant of location public hearing, which is 10-2. We'll then take up the CAPM report, which is 6A, which we have folks here in the room for that report. We'll take a very quick recess for some photos, and then we'll come back. And the other items out of order tonight are 5-1, which we have a sponsored speaker for, and 10-4. And of course, 4.1, we do have the district attorney who will be here this evening around 8 o'clock. So when she arrives, we will take that item up, and then we'll return to the regular order of our agenda. So with that, Madam Clerk, will you please read the next item?
Item 1.3 is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 13th, 2025.
Seeing no opposition, the minutes are approved. Next item.
Item 10.1 is a citation by Councilor Pineda-Neufeld commending the Somerville Public Libraries in honor of National Library Week.
All right, colleagues, it is National Library Week, and yes, round of applause. I have sat now my entire time on the council on the Confirmation of Appointments Personnel Matters Committee, and some of my favorite conversations have been with library trustees who have come before us to get confirmed. We don't now interview them anymore, but I remember when I sat on that committee, and we would talk extensively about the importance of our libraries and how critical they are to our communities, especially now. So I'm going to read the citation and invite our library director up to speak as well. Be it hereby known to all that the Somerville City Council and the Mayor offer their sincerest commendations to the Somerville Public Libraries in honor of National Library Week, in recognition of the exceptional service of the staff and trustees, steadfast commitment to equity and education, and invaluable contributions to the cultural and intellectual life of our city, offered on this 10th day of April 2025 by the whole council and our mayor. So congratulations, and I'll invite Director Piantantini up to speak as well.
Thank you, Councilor Neufeld. I hope you don't mind. I just want to congratulate everybody behind me because thank you. I see a lot of firefighters here tonight, and it seems very celebratory. So thank you so much for all you do. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. I wanted to thank the counselors for recognizing our dedicated library employees and supporters, and for understanding the role our public libraries play in fostering civic engagement. They truly are the heartbeat of our city and represent the most genuine and inclusive community spaces one could ever hope for. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the members of the Board of Trustees and our Friends group and our Library Foundation. We have representatives from each group tonight. Would you mind just standing up quickly, just to show everyone, Kate and Ruth. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you. Their unwavering support and love of our libraries, along with the support and love of the library community, and you, our elected officials, is something that I'm grateful for every single day. Our libraries are in good hands. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Councilor Burnley?
Yeah, through you, at the risk of starting a whole chain of congratulations, I just want to take a brief moment to thank the director for speaking and to just acknowledge that she's speaking on behalf of a lot of people who put a lot of work into our public libraries, from the staff to the trustees, to the Friends of the Somerville Public Libraries, to the Somerville Public Libraries Foundation. We have an entire ecosystem that is growing in this community that is dedicated to safe spaces for our community and education, both things that are very much in jeopardy at the federal level. And I just know that we have folks here who are doing everything they possibly can to build the kind of loving, inclusive community that we want, and the libraries are really at the center of that. So thanks to all those people for the countless often unpaid hours of labor in making our community a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that item is approved. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item
Oh, I'm
10.
sorry. I apologize. Was that a request to speak?
Sure. Madam
Okay,
President.
sorry about that, Councilor Mba.
No, thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to echo my colleague's sentiment, just to say thank you for the work that the library staff, they do. I take my kids to West, and oh boy, just to look for books, I mean, it's really heartwarming to see just the hard work that they do, your offerings and thoughtful recommendations, or simply creating a welcoming environment for the kids are well appreciated. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item 10.2 is a grant of location from Eversource to install approximately 14 feet of conduit in Warwick Street from utility pole 357/4 to a point of pickup at 25 Warwick Street.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone here available here to speak on this item? Jackie Duffy, welcome.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Great, how are you?
Good, thank you. Eversource would like to install 14 feet of conduit in Warwick Street to provide electric service to 25 Warwick Street.
All right, anyone else here to speak on that item? Any other hands? Okay, I declare the public hearing closed. Any councilors who wish to speak on this? Councilor Scott?
Madam President, I've reviewed it. It looks like it's good to go. Thank you.
Okay, hearing no opposition, the item is approved. Next item.
Thank you.
The next item is going to be item 6A, a report of the Committee on Confirmation of Appointments and Personnel Matters, meeting on April 8th, 2025.
Councilor Yoon Kimpin.
Thank you, Madam President. The Committee on Confirmation of Appointments met on Tuesday, and we were thrilled to unanimously recommend for approval tonight several promotions, and I'll just list them off and then ask for the approval of the committee report. The promotion of Eric Saulnier to the position of Fire Captain, Mark Wall to the position of Fire Lieutenant, Patrick Berry to the position of Fire Lieutenant, Joseph Laudano to the position of Fire Lieutenant, Troy Saulnier to the position of Fire Lieutenant, and Eric Collins to the position of Fire Lieutenant. Just before we take up the committee report, for the benefit of my colleagues, we also discussed 3 candidates for police officers for the Somerville Housing Authority, and those were left in committee. We're having a discussion with the solicitor's office, not around the candidates, but around the process, which basically this sort of candidate has not come to the council for quite a while, so we're just trying to understand that process. With that, I ask that this committee report be accepted.
All right. Any questions? The committee report is approved. Madam Clerk.
And that places those appointments before the council for the oath of office. Thank you all. I see you moving up here. For any of those candidates, if you want to meet us right up here in this corner. No? Are they outside? Oh. All right, we have Eric first. I think that was the order of operations. Raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly affirm that you'll faithfully perform the duties incumbent on you as a fire lieutenant for the city of Somerville, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, under the pains and penalties of perjury? All right, then you want to sign right next to where your name is printed, so that thinly dotted line right over where my finger is. There you go. All right, welcome aboard. Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes. Counselor.
before we recess, we have a number of new firefighter positions before us as well, and I was hoping that we could take up items 7.3 to 7.7 for approval as well.
Okay. Madam Clerk, will you read those items?
Yes, indeed. 7.3 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of Kevin McGurk to the position of firefighter. 7.4 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of Michelle Myrtle to the position of firefighter. 7.5 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of Norberto Maldonado to the position of firefighter. 7.6 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of Nolan Carrier to the position of firefighter. 7.7 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the appointment of Peter Donovan to the position of firefighter.
Seeing no discussion, those items are approved. Congratulations. We'll take a brief 8-minute recess for some photos, and I welcome my colleagues to join us in the front, also with our library staff that are here. Do we need a roll call from the recess? Okay. Next item, please.
The next item is going to be item 5.1, a resolution by Councilors Said and Ewan Campen in support of completing the Mass Central Rail Trail.
Councillor Said.
Thank you. Through you, Madam President. First, I would like to thank Councilor Ewan Campen and Alan Moore, the neighbor, for working with the resolution together. We'll first start by sponsoring Alan Moore to speak in support of the resolution. Alan Moore.
Alan, welcome.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. My name is Alan Moore. I live at 23 Cherry Street in Somerville. Thank you, Councilor Said and Ewan Campen, for inviting me to give a brief reason on why I hope you can support this resolution. So I'm also co-president of the Friends of the Community Path here in Somerville. We worked for 23 years to get the Somerville Community Path completed. It opened, in the summer of '23. And now, similarly, there's a large group of people across the state that want to complete that path all the way to Northampton. You may not know that this is the Somerville Community Path is on an abandoned railroad that went 104 miles to Northampton. And over these same last 25 years, other groups and other communities have been working on sections converting this old abandoned railroad into a path like the Somerville Community Path. And as of now, 66 miles of the 104 miles are open. There'll be another 6 or 7 miles opening in Hudson and Sudbury this year. And so, like I said, there's a group of us that want to get this completed so you could walk, cycle, whatever, all the way from North Station in Boston to Northampton. There's a lot of sections still that aren't open that need money and work. So we've, activists like myself and all the 26 communities along the route are asking each government in each community to pass a resolution in support of completing the Mass Central Rail Trail, and we hope that will help perhaps get funding, get the state more involved in getting it completed. So I hope you can agree that it's a worthwhile effort and pass this resolution. Thank you.
Councillor Ewan Campen. Councillors Mba, Wilson, McLaughlin, the whole council would like to sign on to this. Councillor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be very brief. Here in Somerville, we are blessed with a lot of different advocacy communities. And I gotta say, never like to pick favorites, but the Community Path Advocacy Group, they are just unbelievable. And if you ever want to feel inspired, they actually have a website, which respectfully looks like it was made in 1978, but it has photos of what the Community Path in Somerville used to look like before it is what it is today. And it is so incredibly inspiring to go out there and see what it is now, just full of families, people of all ages. It's just spectacular, and it is purely thanks to the really kind of visionary commitment to this that this group of advocates has had just doggedly year after year after year. And the idea of getting this all the way out to Northampton, it's just like too good to be true, but it can happen. And so thank you so much to Alan and to everyone in the Community Path advocacy world who has gotten us to this point, and hopefully Somerville can contribute to this getting halfway across the state.
Councillor Said.
Through you, Madam President, I would like to thank Alan Moore for his advocacy work and all the people who are working on this. And but just imagine what we have in Somerville, our community path. Bringing that to other communities would just be really great. And also, when it comes to climate resiliency, there are no borders. Completing a project like that will help many communities with traffic mitigation, safety, community health, and economic development. So I ask my colleagues to support this resolution.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. So yes, thank you everyone for me personally benefiting from the Community Path every single day. I think I ride that path. And I was fortunate enough, a couple of times in my life, I have ridden the path all the way out to Walden Pond, where the trail stops in Bedford or New Bedford. but it continues a long gravel road all the way down there. And I remember a few years ago, so we are fortunate to have activists like this in the community, because a few years ago, one of our neighboring communities rejected free money to extend this path on the grounds that it was going to bring in those Somerville riffraff to Walden Pond, where they're going to study transcendentalism and take a dip in the water. So just want to say I appreciate this. I hope other cities will follow this lead, because it's a huge benefit to everybody.
Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. I'll be quick. We are a community path family. In my house, my 13-year-old pretty much every day into Boston, out to the suburbs on her bike. I'm used to looking at things happening elsewhere, cool things, and thinking, I want what they have. This is the opposite. I want other people to have what we have here. I want other communities to be able to go, get out, explore their area, and just benefit from an amazing resource like the Community Path.
Councilor Mbaugh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam President. This is even the first time that I actually have seen Mr. Alan Moore in person, but there's a no name in our inbox. So thank you for your advocacy, and thank you, to my colleagues for bringing this forward. I just want to say that your vision and persistence are helping to create a safer, healthier, and more connected Commonwealth, and we are proud to stand with you in support of this transformative project. So thank you.
Okay, this item is approved. Next item.
The next item will be item 10-4, a communication by Councilor Ewan Campen conveying an update on the possible effects of expansion tanks on water meters.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Madam President. We don't have a public speaker, but I do have an email from a member of the public that I'm going to get to in a minute. So, colleagues, back in January, I raised an issue that was brought to me by a constituent about an issue they were having with water meters in Somerville, and the concern being that this resident thought that he was being overbilled for water he wasn't used. And the reason this resident believed was that he has something called an expansion tank, which is a common piece of plumbing equipment that a lot of people have on their water heaters. Looks like a little propane tank. It's like when the water is heating, it can expand and contract, and so this tank is to make sure pipes don't burst. The issue, the pressure created by this tank can send water back and forth, and if that gets to the meter, the concern was that the meter was actually thinking that that was water usage and was charging the resident. So the solution that this resident and several others came to was that they were lacking a backflow preventer, a little check valve, just to make sure that the water can't go back through the meter. So I've now heard from probably about a dozen or so residents. They believe they're in the same situation. Some of them have already installed the check valve and seen the problem go away. But I've also met with the city multiple times on this now. And to date, I will say that my experience has just been odd. It's kind of vacillated between denying that the issue exists, claiming that it is not a real issue, that it's just a matter of kind of work that was done without a permit. But at the same time, I was told that they're ready to prepare a document, a kind of informational document for the public that says, if you have an expansion tank, make sure you get a plumber to install a check valve, which would imply that this could be a real issue, and we have it would be helpful to communicate that. So this has been a difficult situation for a counselor, because I have residents making a very straightforward, plausible explanation of what's going on, and then I have the administration kind of not wanting to take responsibility for helping figure it out. So I have an update. A different resident, not the first person who brought this to me. This person is also an engineer, also has a lot of professional experience working with monitoring systems. Reached out earlier this week. For several months, this person has been doing an experiment. They obtained an industry standard water meter that they had validated by a third party. He described this is what you would do if you were going to present evidence in a court, is you would get your equipment validated. And he ran it in parallel with the city meter. This person also had an expansion tank. Here is the email. Long story short, I installed my own highly accurate flow meter, and I compared the data to the from that to the data available to me from the city meter on WaterScope. With this setup, I saw that the city was reading 19% more water usage than my personal meter averaged across 1 month. I then went 1 month with my expansion tank off, and the delta, the difference, went down to 4%. It seems like the expansion tank's involved. I then installed a backflow preventer, and I turned on the expansion tank about a month ago, and now the meters read the exact same. So, case closed. This is an issue that is caused by not having a backflow preventer. Earlier today, I was told by inspectional services that these backflow preventers are required by code. That would be a very helpful piece of information at any point over the last several months that we were discussing this. I'm not trying to insult the inspectional services, but this piece of information would have really been relevant. What I would like to see is a very clear communication from the city that says, if you have an expansion tank, make sure that the installation is up to code and that you have a plumber install a check valve, otherwise there could be billing irregularities. Just put it on the website. I don't understand why it took this long. My hope is that that language will be on the website shortly, but I've been talking about this publicly since January, before that, behind the scenes. I don't understand why this was so complicated. And I'm just asking that we please, all of us, do everything we can. If you have a constituent who's having this issue, just provide them with this basic piece of information. You might not have a backflow preventer. Thank you.
Councillor Burnley and then Councillor Scott. Oh, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to my colleague, it sounds like there could be as much as a 20% overcharge for water there. For residents who have experienced that, do you have any guidance from the city's water department about how to get that addressed?
Through you, Madam President, I do not, and I honestly do not know. You know, this is by no means to cast shade on residents. For folks who haven't installed it with a permit, it may in fact be the personal responsibility of the person who did that work, and it's not up to code, and I don't know. That could be a possibility that people need to deal with. I'm not in a position to say anything about that. What I can say is just get this backflow preventer. Maybe this affects 24 people in the city. Maybe it affects several hundred. I don't know. Neither does the city. But at the risk of kind of going off the rails here, the residents who brought this to us were acting in good faith. They're not trying to get a bunch of cash from the city. They're trying to help their fellow residents. And it has been very odd the way that the city has responded to this in the press and behind the scenes. And I've been very frustrated by that, and I will leave it at that. It is our responsibility to just help our residents, right? That's what we're here to do. So let's just, let's stop blaming folks for not having pulled the right permit. Okay, sure. There's a piece of information that we can easily provide.
All right, this item is approved. Next item.
That is going to return us to the regular order of business. And item 4.1, a resolution by Councillor Klingon that the Middlesex District Attorney appear before the council to provide an update on the unsolved murders of Deanna Kremen and Charlene Rosemond.
Let's lay this on the table, right, till she gets here. Next item.
Item 4.2 is a resolution by Councillor Said in support of an act facilitating public ownership of public utilities.
Councillor Said.
Through you, Madam President. Last month, they put forward the resolution urging the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities and Eversource to do everything within their power to reduce the burden of rising natural gas costs for some of your residents. So I've been following that conversation at the state level, and recently Rep. Connolly filed a bill on an act facilitating public ownership of public utilities. And I'll say a few things about this. If passed, it would create a working group, a task force, that would examine how we could have public ownership of public utilities. This commission will bring all stakeholders together, including utility companies, to study and make recommendations. Few highlights from the resolution. Publicly owned utilities serve the public interests rather than prioritizing profit, leading to lower rates and granting the ratepayers significant control over the management of their utilities. On November 1st of last year, natural gas rates for Massachusetts residents increased between 11 to 13% for National Grid customers and between 25 to 30% for Eversource customers. Some Massachusetts residents have seen natural gas rate increase as high as 27%. We've heard from neighbors, I'm sure my colleagues heard from constituents about these utility bill spikes. So Eversource, however, reported profits over $800 million in 2024, including an approximately 29% increase in profits on natural gas delivery in Massachusetts from 2023 to 2024. We had some Eversource folks earlier this week during one of the open space committee. We certainly did not get this information. And other things from the resolution, over 2,000 municipalities in the United States are public power communities utilizing publicly owned electric systems, and over 1,000 municipalities utilize publicly owned natural gas systems. Massachusetts is home to over 40 public power communities that also utilize publicly owned natural gas systems. So I think supporting this bill will simply help put this task force together so they can start looking into this. And I ask that my colleagues support this resolution.
Councilor Burnley would like to sign on. The whole council would like to sign on. Great. Any discussion? All right, that item's approved. Next item.
Item 4.3 is an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the city solicitor appear before this city council to discuss the proposed charter currently in the mayor's office and update this council on its progress.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Madam President, I have a huge speech to make right now, or not right now, in the future. So I was ready for the final nail in the coffin of charter reform today. And then I got a call from the mayor's office saying, can you give us a few days? Difference between something being dead and something may come back to life. I'm willing to give them a few days. I'd like to lay this on the table. And there is also an additional item sponsored by Councilor Ewan Campen and Davis and myself. If people want to ask the city about this, they can explain it further. But we're resubmitting the charter that we submitted at the last meeting for whatever reason. I'd like to lay that item on the table as well. And hopefully within 2 weeks, we might have something worth talking about.
Okay. Madam Clerk, did we get that?
Yes, let me read that item.
I think it's 10-3, right? Yes.
Item 10.3 is a home rule petition by Councilors Ewan Campen, McLaughlin, and Davis, proposing a home rule petition to establish a charter for the city of Somerville. So we'll lay that item on the table.
Can we lay both those on the table?
Yep.
Great. Next item.
Item 4.4 is an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Director of Mobility install a rapid flashing beacon with push-button stop sign in front of the East Somerville Community School on the Cross Street side to assist in street crossings.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Traffic and parking, please.
Send the traffic and parking. Next item.
Item 4.5 is an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Commissioner of Public Works increase the lighting at Chucky Harris Park along the fence abutting properties on Minnesota Avenue.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Public utilities, please.
Send that to Public Utilities and Public Works. Next item.
Item 4.6 is an order by Councilors Wilson and Ewan Campen that the Chief Assessor and the City Treasurer discuss with this council the issue of residents not receiving initial motor vehicle excise tax bills resulting in demand fees.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, I don't know if my colleagues are getting asked about this as much as I am, but it sounds like some Somerville residents did not receive their initial notice of their motor vehicle excise tax bill this year. Consequently, they then received the demand notice that carries with it the additional demand fee for when they failed to pay a bill they did not receive. So Councilor Ewan Campen and I were alerted to a situation on Belmont Street where it appears a number of households experienced this. So it seems like something may be amiss here. So I'd love to have a conversation with the folks in the city responsible for getting those bills mailed out to find out if we, in fact, know what happened here. Given the fact this is about the collection of taxes, I'd like to request this be sent to Finance for discussion.
Yep, I agree. Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Madam President. So as my good colleague at large just said, I think probably like 20 or 30 residents of Belmont Street had the same issue. So it could very well be an issue with the Postal Service. Who knows what caused it? It's very clear to me, and I understand this from our treasurer, that the city can't really do anything about this situation. They can't forgive the demand. It's state law. It's very clear. You're responsible for paying these, even if you say you didn't get it in the mail or actually didn't get it in the mail. The issue is I think all of us just want to see some like proactive curiosity about what caused this, just to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Literally no idea what caused it, but I think a conversation and trying to get to the bottom of that would be helpful.
Councilor Klingon.
Madam President, through you, as you all know, I've yelled quite a bit about the USPS situation with regards to inconsistency of delivery of mail. I don't know what this situation is, but I'm sure that probably plays a role in it. I know that I urge everybody to sign up for what's called informed delivery. So you get like a picture of the mail the day of before it actually comes. It shows you what's coming. Funny story, I actually had to send away for my birth certificate from the city clerk of Cambridge recently, and I got my informed delivery, and there it was, and the thing never showed up. And so I asked my letter carrier what happened, what he thinks happened, and he said, well, we're being audited, so a lot of times when we're being followed, like to check our timing and stuff like that, a lot of mail disappears. So just because they need, to keep their efficiency, a lot of mail disappears. That's a quote from my letter carrier. So just know that there are problems at the post office.
I took from that you were born in Cambridge, Councilor Klingon. Just note for the record. Councilor Mba.
Maybe.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I want to thank my colleagues for bringing this forward. I also just want to, highlight the fact that we need to pursue this, at the state level, because we cannot say that, people should be punished, residents, for no fault on their own. This is what happens when people sit and think that government is an organized conspiracy, that is out to get them. So I think the administration should actually, let us know, like, what avenue through the state, because yes, it's the state, but states, these are not robots. These are people who wrote these things down, and so we can literally advocate for this resident and make sure that they are reimbursed for such a mistake. So thank you.
Thanks for bringing this up, Councilor Wilson. I have a constituent with not this particular issue, but a similar one. So I appreciate hearing that there's challenges around the excise tax bills, and I'm going to follow up on that. Any other discussion? We'll send this to Finance. Next item.
The next item will be item 6B, a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting as a committee of the whole on April 2nd, 2025.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, the Finance Committee met as a committee of the whole on Wednesday, April 2nd, with all 11 of us present. Over a 74-minute meeting, we heard from each councilor on their individual budget priorities for FY26, with some councilors highlighting their top priorities from their memos. I know the administration has been looking for a list of the council's top shared budget priorities, as in past years. So the idea had been for colleagues to express support for individual priorities, so as to, adding those up, identify the council's top shared budget priorities for FY26. But with the council opting to instead express support for everything in colleagues' budget priority memos, basically individual councilor budget priorities are the council's budget priorities for FY26. So thank you, colleagues, for showing up and going through that meeting. I ask this committee report be accepted as submitted.
All right, that item's approved. Next item.
Item 6C is a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting on April 8th, 2025.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, the Finance Committee met again on Tuesday, April 8th, with all 5 members present. Over a 2-hour and 39-minute meeting, we took up a 17-item agenda. We unanimously recommended that you approve tonight the following: 4 prior invoice items, a $25,600 grant from Homeland Security for emergency management and fire department supplies, a $3,000 grant from Somerville Cambridge Elder Services for senior transportation, a time-only extension of a contract for work funded by the Community Preservation Act, a $9.75 million bonding authorization, borrowing against our future community development block grants in order to loan Somerville Housing Authority that same amount to facilitate phase 2 of the Clarendon Hill housing project, an appropriation of nearly $78,000 from the Medicinal Marijuana Stabilization Fund for salary and fringe of the to-be-filled Prevention Services Coordinator through the end of FY26. That's an important thing, not through the end of this year, through the end of FY26. An appropriation of $160,000 for flooring and subflooring at Founders Rink. That should look very familiar to you all from our last meeting. More on that momentarily. And an ordinance by Councilor Campen establishing automatic cost of living adjustments for elected officials. We then marked as work completed 2 orders by Councilor Strezzo pertaining to administrative support staff for city councilors, as these are now part of the FY 2026 budget process with the city clerk working on that. We also marked as work completed an order by Councilor Burnley, asking for an update on the disparity study, since we got the ultimate update 2 weeks ago in this chamber in the form of that full presentation on the report that we all remember. Finally, we kept in committee Councilor Burnley's order asking for an update on federal grants that might not be available in the coming fiscal year due to the, we'll call it chaos in the nation's capital, and the impact on programs and services here in the city. We did get an update from Director of Grant Development about the January pause on grant payments and a situation that continues to change rapidly day to day. We're definitely in a wait and see mode on a number of fronts, but we do know at this point that Health and Human Services is going to feel the impact of the end of the CDC grants to states. We talked about recent closures of some Head Start offices and the possible impact on Somerville. The city is continuing to submit grant applications in the expectation that they will be accepted and paid out. We'll see. We ended the discussion on the really sobering note that the state has already indicated that they will not be able to stand in the gap and make up for federal funding that's lost. Given the rapidly changing situation, we opted to keep the item in committee to allow for future updates. Now, about 2 of those recommendations that I mentioned. I want to talk about the Founders Rink one. We'd sent the appropriation item for flooring at Founders Rink back to committee for additional conversation 2 weeks ago. Public Works Commissioner Jill Lathan sent a memo outlining the costs of taking up that flooring at the end of the fall, starting it over the colder months in order to put down an ice sheet, and then putting the floor back down in the spring in order to make year-round use of Founders Rink. Commissioner Lathan presented that data to the committee and answered our questions. One important update from the previous meeting in Finance 2 weeks ago is that this flooring will be such that it can be taken down or taken up and put back down seasonally, as opposed to what we heard last time, which was basically if you tear it out, it's done. So approving this request will not lock us into letting the rink sit dark and unused outside of the warmer months. Making year-round use of Founders will require putting in place a policy around the dates for the different uses of the facility, and then funding the labor and potential storage costs in the FY26 budget. On the budgeting front, Commissioner Lathan's memo estimated a cost of approximately $120,000 per year for labor and storage to make an ice sheet and year-round use of Founders possible. Commissioner Lathan also estimated municipal revenues of around $35,000 a year from payments from a third-party operator. So we're talking about a net spend of roughly $85,000 per year to have year-round use of Founders possible. We've subsequently been asked by ice sports advocates to not approve this item until we have a commitment from the administration that they will budget for this work and pursue the policy of taking up that flooring each November to make the ice sheet and then melting the ice sheet in March to put the flooring back down. And then the other thing I want to talk about, we spent a decent amount of time on the proposed amendment to the ordinance for cost of living adjustments for electeds. Following an update from the Council's legislative and policy analyst, we approved amended language reflecting the changes that have been worked out in conjunction with the law department. These address concerns about conflicts of interest in line with guidance from the State Ethics Commission. The solution was to go with the lower of 2% or the average consumer price index for all urban consumers, Boston, Lawrence, Salem, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, as published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, United States Department of Labor. We amended the text to reference that local CPI figure as of January 1st of the previous year to allow for easier budgeting. It's important to know what it's going to be ahead of constructing the budget. This automatic COLA would happen unless there's a recommendation from the Municipal Compensation Advisory Board, and the council retains the right to vote to forego any compensation increase, whether as a result of the MCAB recommendation or automated by ordinance. There was some discussion of a 2% versus a 4% increase, but ultimately we opted to recommend approval of that amended text. With that, I ask this committee report be accepted as submitted.
Councilor Ian-Gibbon.
Madam President, I'd like to sever that item, the elected compensation, just so we can discuss it. I think that merits a conversation with the full council. That is item 250375.
Okay. On that? No. Okay. Great. Committee report is approved. No. That item is severed.
Yep, so
Yes.
item 25-0375,
Madam President?
amending the Code of Ordinances by adding section 2-325, chapter 2, article 6, division 3, related to compensation for elected officials, is now before the council.
Madam President?
Okay. Yes, Councilor Clean.
Question on procedure. Is it possible, once someone makes a motion like that we can table this? Just because I see the DAs in the hallway, and this could turn into a longer discussion. So if that's okay with colleagues.
Let's lay this on the table. Okay. Then can we move to 4.1, Madam Clerk?
Of course, Madam President. We will pick up from the table item 4.1, a resolution by Councilor Klingon that the Middlesex District Attorney appear before this council to provide an update on the unsolved murders of Deanna Kremen and Charlene Rosemond.
Councilor Klingon.
Madam President, thank you. I put this item in on the request of the Middlesex District Attorney. She did respond to our resolution last week and asked to come before us. So I'm really delighted and happy to have her here this evening to speak on these cases. I'm sure everybody's heard by now. There is a really big update in one of these cases, which I'm extremely happy to hear. I know, as Bob Curley once put it, there's no such thing as closure, but justice certainly, goes a long way in the healing process. So. With that, I would just ask the DA to come up and give that update. Madam President, through you, after the DA speaks, I will sponsor Deanna's mom to speak, as well as Charlene's sister, if that's okay. And then I also would, I hope that we're able to ask a few questions of the DA. Obviously, nothing that's going to reveal anything from the case, but if, so long as it's okay with Madam DA. That's all, Madam President. Thank you.
DA Ryan, welcome. Join us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I brought some props. Yeah, sure. That poster, as many of you know, in 2019 we started what we refer to as our cold case unit, and that was born of the first case on there, a case that I tried myself after having worked on that case for 20 years. That case involved the murder of a young single mother who was found dead in her apartment in Lowell by her 3 children when they came home from school. And seeing for 20 years, watching those kids grow up, living lives that were certainly not the lives that their mother would have wanted for them, really made the point of this is something that when people come into this county, they commit a serious crime, they take someone's life, the message we have to be sending to them is we have not forgotten and we will not give up. So we created this unit really based on that first case there, Patricia Clark, and since then, including today, we've been able to bring to 10 families answers as to what happened. And you're right, there is no such thing as closure. It does not change the loss that a family suffers. What it does do is begin the process of accountability, and that is what's critical. So I am happy to talk about that unit. I'm happy to talk about some of our cases. As many of you may have heard today, we were able to call Charlene Richmond's family and tell her that we today were able to obtain a murder indictment against an individual for the murder of her sister all those years ago this week. We were also able to identify another individual who prior to today has died of natural causes, who we are confident that had he not passed away, the evidence would have been sufficient to indict him as well. So that And that happened as a result of really hundreds and hundreds of hours. And to our cold case unit, headed by Assistant District Attorney Dave Solid, to the Somerville Police Department, who never gave up on this case, and to the state troopers assigned to our office. The trooper who stood with me today had actually responded to the scene in Union Square 16 years ago. And I think that's the piece about cold cases. People say all the time, when is it going to be done? And we don't ever know that, because we don't know what is going to be that piece. You can be 80% there, and you don't know what that missing 20% is going to be. You don't know where you're going to get it. And it comes in a variety of ways. I think right now people think of it always as a forensic piece, that suddenly we're going to get a DNA match or we'll find a fingerprint, and we have had that in some cases. We probably much more often, it is the result of the passage of time. People who were confidants or girlfriends or significant others at one point aren't in that relationship anymore. They're much more willing to talk about what they know. Sometimes people do things when they're young. They become adults. Maybe they have kids of their own, and they now realize how important it is to come forward. We have had a couple of cases where people facing a very bad diagnosis of their own realize that they don't want to leave this world with things on their conscience that they knew, and that is often what starts that process of being able to go forward. So certainly we use cutting-edge forensics. We are the only office in the state who has a forensic genealogist on our staff that has helped us with some of these cases. But the vast majority of these cases have been solved by good, solid investigative work. So I'm happy to answer any questions that people have, either about cold cases in general or about either of these cases, understanding, particularly with respect to the Cremins case, and I've talked to Kathy as well, that there are limited things that we can talk in specifics about.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, as I had mentioned, I would like to sponsor, Rosaline. If you want to come up and say a few words.
Welcome.
Rose, just read your name into the record and your address.
Sure. Rosalie Rosemond. I am the younger sister of Charlene Rosemond. And being able to receive that call, I was here a couple weeks ago talking about how my family and I feel like each year there's no answers, there's no justice, and for me to be back here as soon as I am, because we received that call, is absolutely, you know, both heartbreaking, and my parents and I are also happy at the same time. It's unfortunate based on the circumstances. We would prefer not to be here at all. We would prefer not to have that call be received and for my sister to be here, but since she cannot be here, one step towards justice is the best thing for my family and I to start to grieve the proper way and to feel like there's some type of closure. So we're appreciative for all the law enforcement work that has been done. As I've stated before, I don't feel like a lot of people in the community of Somerville has been helpful. However, I know there are a few that were willing to come forward, so I'm grateful for their part as well. And I also mentioned that I want my parents to be able to still be alive when they do receive that call, and the fact that that was able to happen. My parents both wanted me to mention today that they are, you know, extremely happy to be able to receive that call, and that as heartbroken as they are, they're going to be there every step of the way to make sure that the people responsible for killing their daughter is put away. And we're just happy that we're able to start the process of getting the closure for my family. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Klingon.
And Madam President, as I stated with colleagues, yeah, let's get a round of applause for that. This is a hard one. Now I'd like to bring up my friend for many years, my friend's mother, Catherine Kremen, who has yet to receive that call, and who would like to come up and say a few words. Catherine, if you could just come up.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, my name is Catherine Crumman. I am Deanna Crumman's mother. This year it's been 30 years that Deanna's murder has been unsolved. Excuse me. There's a lot more real standing here. And I am. Thank you. And facing my constituents. But over the 30 years, I can't say that my horror has decreased, but believe it or not, my hope gets stronger because of new forensic science, because of diligent investigators, our district attorney, a councilman, and relatives and friends who don't let this go to sleep. And on that, I know that there are so many murders that are just like, oh, well, another one gone because the world is in such chaos. But, you know, what happened to Deanna and what it inevitably did to my family and a lot of her friends, where her presence would have definitely made a difference in their lives. And maybe hers, I mean, theirs and hers. I don't know who killed Deanna for a fact. I know where my suspicions lie, but you can't close that door either until you have absolute proof. And I do believe that, you know, talking about this at this time and keeping the bubbly little life that she had, her kind heart, her strong ambitions and sight for her growth, for her, what she was going to do in the world with her skills. And I just want people to be peaceful with one another the way Deanna would have been, and I don't know where I'm going. And never give up hope that Deanna's murder is going to get solved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor.
Madam President, if I could just sponsor one more speaker. This is a friend of Deanna's of many years, Jamie McDonald, to come up and just say a few words. I think it's, you know, we often hear from family. I think it's important to hear from friends, and because why I put this order in is because the way it impacts the entire community, and Deanna had a lot of friends, and so I just wanted to have that representation here this evening.
Thank you, DA and everybody in presence here. So my name is Jamie McDonald. I grew up here in Somerville alongside with Deanna, and have spent the past 30 years of my adult life along with Jesse and Kim, another friend of ours, trying to do whatever it is we can do to bring justice to Kathy and Bert and the rest of the family. There has been no stone unturned. As a friend, as a community, we have had rallies, we've had walks, we've had masses, we've done everything we can do to try to keep her memory alive. But we have a capacity, and there is a boundary as individual citizens that we can only take it so far. And here, 30 years later, which is unfathomable to be here still and have the same answer that I had as that 16-year-old girl when I was pulled out of high school to be told my friend was strangled to death. I have that same answer today, which is nothing. There's no reason. There is nothing. I too have my suspicions, and I'm sure much like Charlene's family, having suspicions maybe. It's not changed in 30 years, and it's not going to change 30 years from now. But the only thing we can change is the result of what's going to happen. Deanna deserves to rest in peace. We all deserve to rest in peace. I'm a mother of 3 sons. My mission in my life goal is to make sure I raise good humans. We lost a really good human. We did, and the world was gypped of her. I'm asking you, DA, please, whatever there is, whatever DNA that we have not done, do it. If we've done it, do it again. If there's someone willing to help, let them help us. Anything. I can't continue on and have no answer for my friend. I don't feel I am doing her justice right now. Thank you.
I want to speak a little bit to the question of DNA because I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think we all watch the TV show where the DNA comes and in an hour we know who it is. There are three really big concerns about DNA. Number one, we have to recover DNA that is usable. So we can sometimes recover DNA. When DNA is recovered and it's tested, the purpose of testing it is to identify a profile of an individual who left that DNA, and then you seek to match that profile to somebody that may have committed that crime. In order to be uploaded into the computer to be able to be matched, the profile has to be of a certain quality. If I were to take a DNA kit right now and swab the inside of my cheek and send that off, and that were properly delivered and tested, the likelihood is that you would obtain from that sample a full DNA profile. It would hit on all the appropriate alleles, and you'd have a whole picture of who it was who had given that DNA sample. That's what happens when you buy one of those home genealogy tests. As you can imagine, people at a crime scene very rarely leave a pristine sample of DNA. And secondly, it has to also be preserved. When you take that swab, much like we all took COVID tests, you take that swab, you put it in a little envelope, it has to be sent off, the temperature has to be controlled, all of that. So DNA is, in some respects, fragile. So DNA that may have been left and it got rained on and it's gone, or it was 100 degrees on the sidewalk, and what you get from that may be much less than a full profile. So that's one limitation on DNA. The second is, even if you are able to develop if you're going to test, we are required by law in Massachusetts, if I have a sample and I'm going to do a certain type of DNA testing on it, I have to take a sample that is twice as big as what I need, because 1/2 of that same sample has to be preserved, because when we identify a suspect, that person and their attorney have access, has to be given that other half so they can do their own testing. So if I have a little sample of DNA, I'm going to do a certain kind of, maybe it's mitochondrial DNA testing I'm going to do. I have to divide it in half, keep half, test half, and save the other half for later. And so very often, even when you recover DNA and even when you are able to develop a profile from it, you don't have an unlimited amount. So you are always making an assessment about, if I only have this much, what are the odds that this test might get me someplace, and do I use what I have? Because when you use it all, there is no more. And if a test were developed a month from now that would have been effective, you won't have any more DNA. So we are often in these cases doing many, many rounds of DNA. Every time things change, we look through our cases to say they've now discovered a way to do something. I'll give you an example. When we initially used DNA, if the DNA was a mixture of two people, our lab could not test that. So you might often have, even in a fight, you might have hit me, I was bleeding, you hurt your knuckles, you were also bleeding. That blood would be a mixture. Our lab could not peel that apart. In just about 25 years, DNA has come light years. We're able to test mixtures. We're able to test other things. So we are always thinking about, what are the odds that this will work here, and what are the odds that something else will be better? So DNA is an amazing thing when you can get a profile that is good enough to test. And as we saw in one of the cases depicted on that chart, many of you may have seen just a few weeks ago, we brought an individual back from California for the 2 rapes of the women who were working at the Hit or Miss 36 years ago out on Route 9. In that case, we had an amazingly good DNA sample. What is very rare, we were able to develop a full profile. We ran that for about 34 years, and we never once got a match, because the individual who we ultimately indicted and charged with those crimes had never been in a situation where he had to give his DNA, so his DNA wasn't in there. He'd never been convicted of a crime that required a DNA sample. He'd never done anything else where he gave a sample. So you've got to have a good profile. You've got to have enough to have done the testing to get there, saving what we're required to save. And then when you test, you have to have the person who might be a suspect. That's the benefit of forensic genealogy. The extra step that forensic genealogy lets you do is, suppose the person who is going to be your suspect is not in there. What you might find is, assume you have a good profile. You don't find a good match for that. But you find a profile that matches in a lot of the important places on that strip. That would tell you that that DNA was put in by someone who's a relative of that person. It's not them, but it's a relative. And then a forensic genealogist can use that to start building out a family tree to see who is in the degree of relationship to that person, who is the right age, the right sex, who has a location near where this happened. And then we do another whole set of investigative steps to ultimately get to the person we believe to be our suspect. We then get a DNA sample with a court order from that person, and we should, if we've been right, and we have in many of those cases, we get a perfect match between the profile we developed and the profile taken from that questioned individual who becomes our suspect. That is an enormous asset, because it used to be when we got to something where we could see that these people had to be related, we had nowhere else to go with that. So science is changing constantly.
Councillor Klingon.
Madam President, thank you through you. So just speaking on the specific order this evening with regards to the two cases, one being Charlene's, which has a great update. So I'll forego any questions I may have had about that particular case, but I do just have a couple of cases about Deanna's, a couple of questions about Deanna's case, if that's okay. My first question to the DA specifically is Deanna's case a cold case? Is it with the cold case squad? If not, why?
We consider in our office cases that are beyond 6 years from the date of when the incident happened to be an uncharged or cold case. We often will move those cases, typically, as many of you know, people who come and work in our office, many times they don't stay much longer than 6 years. So the person who originally had that case is no longer with us. In that case, our cold case unit would handle that. There are cases where it is not as though our cold case unit is a special vault. The question that you are asking is who's assigned to Deanna's case. That is our chief of homicide, who's had that case for almost 30 years. Her office is next to Assistant District Attorney Dave Sollitt's office, who is the head of our cold case unit. They work very closely together. It is always preferable when you have people who've developed those relationships with the family, with the people involved in the case. That is a great asset. So that is a distinction without a difference.
Madam President, just a couple follow-ups. So you originally in the press, you had said that Charlene's case wasn't cold, but now you have it on the board as cold and solved now. I guess the reason why it matters is because, through you, Madam President, is because, you know, cold case and then launching a squad in 2019, which you did, that signals to people that actually seems more active when a case is cold, when you have a squad like actually assigned to it versus just the same investigator having the case on their desk. And it seems to have worked in this case. So I don't know, you know, that particular assistant DA, if she is actively working on it regularly, as the cold case squad might, or not. But do you understand why it might seem important to people?
I can understand why it seems important, and I'm happy to explain again. The person who is working on that case and with whom, you know, often, and I said this today at the press conference, when I have a press conference and I say, as I was fortunate to be able to do today, we have gotten an indictment, we have made an arrest, it seems like, well, that was easy. The re-examination of this particular case began in October of 2021. October of 2021. That is 3.5 years of hundreds and hundreds of hours of going back through things, looking again, thinking about different ways to approach a case, approach different people. So that piece of work, fortunately, if we had talked about this 6 months ago, you would say, where is the result? So effort does not always equal result. As we've been able to share with Deanna's mother, there's been endless activity on this case. Efforts to try talking to this person, efforts to follow up on a tip, efforts to try different kinds of DNA. The fact that we don't get to a result happens in every one of these cases that is now charged, but that's not what people see. Because you see when we get to the end, some of these cases are 40 or 50 years old. Over time, enormous amounts of effort were put into that case that maybe didn't go anywhere. Maybe we interviewed a person who didn't give us what we hoped they would give us. We tested and we didn't find a result. That is not reflective of a lack of work or effort on a particular case. There has never been a time when the Cremens case, and I take all of these cases seriously, but I'm here tonight in part because I know what this has done to this community. I spent more than half of my life in this community. I went to elementary school across the street from where Charlene's body was found. I walked the streets where Deanna's body was found for much of my childhood. I know what this means. And so people may be confused about the difference. It does not in any way indicate any lack of effort. And I have every confidence, just as we did today with Charlene's case, that the day will come when we will be here saying we have reached that point in Deanna's case.
Thank you. Madam President, first of all, colleagues, thank you for indulging in this. This is really important to a lot of people, so I really appreciate your indulgence. Just another question. The evidence that was damaged in the Fernald School, the files, was any of Deanna's case files or any evidence pertaining to Deanna's case at the Fernald School where there was the issue of mold and all that stuff?
I'm not going to talk about the specifics of any particular case, but I have no issues about what the sustainability of that investigation is with respect to that incident that happened at the Fernald School.
Okay, so you're not going to answer that?
I am not concerned about that at all.
Okay.
With respect to Deanna's case.
All right, just two more questions, and I appreciate you doing this tonight, of course. Can't mitochondrial DNA be multiplied?
If you get a good, so that's like taking a line out of a textbook. Yes, all DNA, when we are tested, when we get the profile, a part of the process of doing DNA comparison, and I'm good, I know a lot of DNA, I put a lot of DNA experts on the stand. I am not going to claim that I am a DNA scientist, but I will tell you that in order to do any of the amplification, you are always copying and recopying. If you think about an EKG machine, you think about the strip that comes out and you see that charts. When you test something for DNA, you get a result that looks very much like that. Those highs and those lows are alleles. Particular alleles have more or less importance in defining who someone is. And once you develop a piece of a profile, particularly if you have a small amount of DNA, in order to be able to do, you would not want to say, gee, I see that one spot and that matches somebody, that must be a match. In order to make a more complete comparison, you multiply it and you make now, if you can imagine, the long string of paper. So you have many, many replications of that, which you should see in the profile of the individual whose DNA you are comparing. So then you would know you didn't just hit this point, you saw that same thing appearing over and over again.
Okay.
And mitochondrial DNA, for people who don't know, is the part of your DNA that you inherit from your mother. So when we have a match as to what I talked about before in forensic genealogy between a potential suspect and a sample from a scene, that helps the forensic genealogist in knowing that they are looking for a relative with a common female connection, a grandmother, a mother, an aunt, or that sort of thing.
Through you, Madam President. And sorry, this is a little bit pointed, but you know, I've read the case, the 48-year-old case out of Cambridge, out of Harvard University, and how the experts wanted to assist the DA's office. And it seems like Massachusetts, and specifically the Middlesex DA's office, is extremely holds things extremely close to the vest. Why is the DA's office reluctant to accept help from outside experts in Deanna's case in her unsolved murder?
It's not an issue of accepting help from outside experts. As I previously said, we are the only office in the state that has a forensic genealogist on our staff that we brought in. Unfortunately, and I know there's some information or thought about this, it's not a case where we can just bring a whole bunch of people in and show everybody all the evidence. I mean, we can't crowdsource this. So, yes, of course, we reach out, we use other experts, we use that in every piece of our work. I was talking in the other room about our adaptive swim program, where we partner with companies that provide swimming lessons for neurodivergent children. We sometimes use other partners or other labs. We use private labs in some cases, for instance, Bodie Lab in Texas, lots of those other things. We bring in often anthropologists if we have pieces of evidence that are recovered and we need to do that. So there is no reluctance to use other experts. We do not, because in the course of an investigation, one of the pieces that's critical in an investigation for a number of reasons, but particularly in verifying a statement that we might get, there are always pieces of a crime that are held very close to the vest, are not part of the public discussion of that crime. So that then, were we to reach a certain point, talk to someone tells us that information, we know that they didn't get that from the Boston Globe or Channel 5. So that is an important piece, and that is why information relative to details of an investigation, what we are able to share, we share only with the family. We obviously don't discuss publicly, because our goal is to make certain about the integrity of the evidence we have to present at trial, and that we are doing our very best to be able to say to a family, we have done an investigation, as we were able to say today to the Richmond family, we have done an investigation that I am confident is unassailable, will stand the test of a trial, and will stand on appeal. The Patricia Clark case that I tried myself, as happens to every first-degree murder case in Massachusetts, that defendant appealed his case. I defended that case at the Supreme Judicial Court, and that conviction was upheld. We are in this for the long goal, and that is what we are always thinking about. Yes, it's always interesting to have things along the way. We look at those, we evaluate what the risks might be versus potential harm, and we make decisions about that.
Thank you. I know in 2013 we brought 48 hours to the table, like with you, sitting at the table.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. In 2013 we had 48 hours at the table with you, the TV show, that were willing to get their world-renowned DNA experts out of Amsterdam or something like that. That's why I asked the question, because of things like that have happened. And then the last question, just.
And just if I might, to that point, I'm not aware of cases that are solved by TV shows. And what solves cases is good, hard, investigative work and forensic work. What is helpful from a TV show, and what I'm asking as a charge tonight, I am very confident that there are people in this city who have information about Deanna's murder that could be shared with us. That is what would be helpful, is if people, there have been a number of people who we have sought to talk to, who have an absolute right not to talk to us, but it certainly is my belief that they have information that would move us down the chain. That is something that would be helpful.
Last question, Madam President, through you. Is there anything you are willing to or would consider, many other police stations around the country, police departments around the country, sometimes release facts from the case that actually work to generate leads, generate energy, stir the pot. Is there anything, or would you be willing to release something new for people to grab onto and hopefully.
I've given numerous interviews about this case. I take every opportunity, that's why I'm here. I take every opportunity to speak publicly to the media in other forums about this case in the hopes of dislodging some piece of information. I am happy to do that. Are we going to share the contents of an evidentiary file? No, I don't anticipate that that will happen.
No, but through you, Madam President, with all due respect, you understand what I'm saying, right?
No,
It's
I
not
don't.
Okay. Well, I'll send you some links after the meeting, but it's just, at this point in time, I think everyone is just like, what do you have to lose? I mean, we're talking 30 years here. I don't know.
Respectfully, Councilor, if you look at the chart, and I brought copies of that chart for everyone on the council, so you don't have to do the stretch. You were nice to hold that for me. But you can take a look and see the cases that were solved at 40 and 50. Frankly, I think if you and I had had a conversation 2 weeks ago about the Roseman case, you would have said to me at 16 years, why can't we just release everything? Unfortunately, we are an incredibly transparent office. You can go on our website, you can see full releases as to any officer-involved shooting, as to our data, full releases as to our cold cases. Are we doing those kind of releases in the midst of an investigation? Unfortunately, we are not, because I believe there is not a time limit. I do not say, gee, it's been 30 years, I guess it doesn't matter what we do with that evidence. Because the importance of double jeopardy and being able to ultimately go forward and have preserved chain of custody, preserve the integrity of who we're talking to, matters when we get to trial.
So through you, Madam President, when that ADA retires, will that case then go to the cold case squad?
I assume so, yes.
That's all, Madam President. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues.
Councilor Mbaugh and then Councilor Wilson.
If it is still uncharged. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, thank you, Madam President. Through you, I want to thank my colleagues for bringing this forward and also putting it before the council year after year. And also, I want to thank the families, and friends that, for being here and for speaking. To you, the DA, I appreciate the forensic genealogy session. It's really helpful for us to learn about your work and the methodology that you use. I just want to express first my sincere gratitude to you and to your office, for the work you've done in resolving this case, especially for Charlene Rosamond. We recognize the significance of this development for her family and our community. So we want to thank you for your dedication in pursuing justice. Thank you. And we also want to extend our continued support to the family of Diana Kremen, and we appreciate your ongoing commitment to seeking answers in her case as well. It's very sober, to listen to everything about her. So these efforts are deeply meaningful to us who care about truth, justice, and healing. I want to ask you just maybe like 1 or 2 questions. The first one is like, what support systems, are available to families of victims, in long-standing unsolved cases? Like, what support system do you provide to them?
We provide anyone who's been a victim or a witness in one of our cases with the services of our victim witness advocates. We also make referrals to any other services that may be appropriate. This evening I was talking with Deanna's mom about one of the places we often refer people to who have joined the club that no one wants to be in, the grief support groups for parents who have lost children. Often we will have a family where there are people at different ages and stages. You might have parents, you might have young siblings. We make appropriate referrals to that. We also have created within our office a very unique program for when either police or our troopers respond to a scene, some kind of traumatic scene, whatever it might be. Someone might have died by suicide, it might be a homicide, and there are children present. We have a program where the troopers that are there not only make the referral as they're mandated by law to the Department of Children and Families, but they make a referral to a mental health service, that within 24 hours we'll have counselors available for those individuals. And then obviously, if in the appropriate circumstance, someone can apply if they have a monetary loss to the fund run by the Attorney General's office for some reimbursement for perhaps burial expenses or that sort of thing.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. And through you, and one last question is, I'm curious to know how your office, currently is communicating with the families as well. Like, how do you engage with them?
With families on our cases, we meet with them regularly. We have an advocate who's advising them of every date. One of the great benefits of COVID has been for families, families are always able to attend any of the court dates. Not everyone has the resources to take time off from work or to get themselves and maybe their children or whoever to a court date. So one of the few benefits of COVID has been the courts have been more open about letting families join by Zoom. So every one of our families has an advocate assigned to them. We're talking to them, meeting with them, kind of explaining where we are as we go through the process.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, through you to DA Ryan, thank you for being with us this evening and talking about this. I appreciate you pointing out that, the benefit of familiarity with the case, of the relationships built, of having the same person in charge of it. You can imagine a natural question people might have is, what about the idea of, here, after 30 years, a fresh set of eyes, fresh thinking, fresh approach? Can you assure us that despite having the same person in charge of the case, that it's also being shown to other people and that we are getting new ideas, new approaches here?
I can not only assure you that, I can promise you that. I've spent my entire career as a trial prosecutor trying literally dozens and dozens of homicide cases. I oversee those cases closely. One of the greatest assets of our office is our people and the collaborative approach we take to our cases. It is not, this is my case and I don't speak to other people about that. We regularly look at these cases, talk about them, strategize about them. It is not as though, I understand the fear of someone's hugging to this folder and they don't see anything else. First of all, that's just not possible in terms of the new kinds of resources we're always bringing online and people are being trained in. But that is my approach to running this office. I know the value of collaboration and good colleagues sharing their thoughts or what I might have tried in a case that is the benefit, is having someone as the district attorney who brings that decades of trying those cases and doing those investigations.
Madam President, I appreciate that answer. I was hopeful that would be the response. I just wanted to make sure. The other question I had was, obviously, very timely that you're here with the news that broke today. Very welcome news. I watched much of the press conference. To the extent you're able to share with us, what changed so recently such that you're able to get this indictment? So, as I mentioned, this was not one of those cases where there was a sudden breakthrough of forensic. We didn't suddenly get a DNA report that this matched and that was it. This was much more in the category of people who had once been confidants being in a position where they were now willing to share things they knew. And also people, several witnesses being in a place in their life where they're, just as happens to all of us, you work with some people, you have some allegiance, time passes, you go somewhere else, allegiance shift, maybe you think of things. I held back a little bit on this because we were pseudo friends at some point and people being a little bit more forthcoming. Well, Madam President, I don't know if the recent spate of attention to the case has helped at all with any of that, but I guess if it did, it's a good argument for keeping these cases out there, for having moments like this where the DA comes and talks about these cases. And I just really hope that we see a similar call made to Deanna's family. I live on Jake Street. Her square is right there. Their family deserves justice.
I don't talk about this all the time, but it is relevant here. I, a number of years ago, had the misfortune of being a victim in a robbery and a murder. It was a robbery that went wrong. My best friend was killed. That case went unsolved for some period of time. There is no one working on these cases right now who knows better the terrible anguish of not knowing, of wondering where that person is, what happened in the last few minutes, of thinking about, will I inadvertently pass the person on the street who did something? I fully understand that. That's why we have this unit, and that is why we devote so much of the resources that the legislature gives us to moving these cases forward. That's why we are in that position to see those families that are depicted on that chart. I am very confident that there are going to be many, many more families added to that list.
Any other questions? Councillor Scott.
I just want to say thank you to my colleagues for all of their for all their work, especially my colleague in Ward 4 for honestly most of a lifetime of work on this. I did also want to return to congratulating once again on coming to some closure in the Rosemont case. I had, honestly, as soon as I saw the press release, I went to the court docket and went to look for that indictment. I haven't seen it uploaded yet. I know we relayed through the clerk's office a request. Were you able to-
It is up, I know, only because the media had it almost instantaneous. You on Mass Courts?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had it really before, I think, we had even done the press conference. Channel 5 was reporting it.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe we can have a recess after this. I'll get some tech support on finding that. All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I look forward to reading it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll try to relay all comments and questions through you. At the risk of being repetitive, I heard your answer to my colleague at large around the importance of having all these different eyes on the evidence and making sure that it is collaborative. To me, it begs the question that if that is the case, and if it is the case that your office considers any case over 6 years a cold case, why is this not housed within the cold case unit? If there's already all this collaboration, why not just shift it over?
Maybe the confusion is it is our cold case unit. It's headed by Assistant District Attorney Dave Solid. He has working with him some paralegals, some other support staff, and then obviously we have the resources of the state troopers assigned to our office. We are fortunate to be a big enough office to even be able to create a unit where somebody can devote their time, but we have one person who's doing that, one attorney who's doing that. So, and he has a very big caseload that he is working on, and you see the results. There is a value, and one of the things that we strive the hardest for, because we hear it over and over and over again from families, in having people who don't start over, it's nice to meet you, can you tell me all about the heartbreak you have been through? And it also is, in a sense, knowledge of what we know when a name comes up. We know who that person is. There's a great value to that. So there certainly are cases. We are also fortunate to have a number of wonderful lawyers who have made this their career. So there are a number of cases where people are still in our office and they're still working on those cases, communicating with those families as they have for years. So it is certainly not the case that every single case over 6 years old is in that unit. For instance, Patricia Clark. I kept Patricia Clark. I worked on Patricia Clark. That was 20 years old when we ultimately identified that perpetrator. The same is true with the Jane Britton. That was actually our chief of homicide who was assigned to that case. She had that case not for the whole 50 years, but for a very long time. Communicated throughout that with a far-flung family, and then ultimately we were able to get to resolution.
All right, thank you. Through the chair, I'm certainly not going to speak for the family. I'm curious as to their reaction and if they would be willing to have those conversations, because from what I've felt and what I've seen, it feels as though any attempt to come at this from a different angle is welcomed. But additionally, you spend a lot of, I don't want to say your testimony, but let's say your testimony today, talking about forensic genealogy. I'm curious because I know the American Bar Association has argued for the regulation of that at the state level. Are you aware, does Massachusetts currently have regulations about the usage of forensic genealogy, such as having to go through a judicial process in order to use that technology?
So Massachusetts is in the process of creating those regulations, and interestingly, the person who has Deanna's case, Chief of Homicide, is the person appointed by the governor to the Forensic Oversight Board. She is the renowned expert throughout Massachusetts on those issues, and they are working on those regulations. It is also the case that various labs, we would only use an accredited lab. The process for a lab to become accredited is very stringent, and part of it is the accreditation, part of the accreditation process is having those kind of internal controls.
Thank you. Well, here's...
Can I just say one more thing? It's important...
Only through the chair, though. Only through the...
Sorry, can I add one more thing? It's important to understand, too, that when you use forensic genealogy as one more investigative tool. So, for instance, we might use, this hasn't happened to us, but you could potentially do that family tree, and it looks like it might be X, person X. We don't get a warrant and go out and get that person. We then begin a whole different investigation about that person, and is that person anyone who might be somebody we should consider in our pool of suspects. That's a long investigative process. When we are done and we are satisfied that person should be in our pool, we go to the court, get a court order to take a DNA sample from that person, and then see if we can make that match. So it is not, gee, we just sort of look on the family tree and then we're arresting somebody. That is the first step in a very, very long process.
Yeah. Through the chair, thank you for that. I won't say clarification, update, added context. And it's good to know that we are in a process to create those regulations, both, I think, on a civil rights level, it is really important, as well as, to your point, it may be a vehicle to help actually get us to the end of this case sooner if more labs are able to get that accreditation. Just as a final note, like my colleagues, I just want to thank Councilor Clingan for his work on this. I know that every year he's talked about this for the last 30 years. Outside of Deanna's family and her very close friends, I don't know anyone who spent more time in this community doing this work and uplifting this memory for us all. So I just want to give him his kudos, and I very, very much hope that we can see a conclusion to this case and on to the next phase as quickly as possible. And whatever the council and the community can do toward that end, I'm very open to suggestions, and I'm hopeful that we can get there. Thank you.
Suggestion, it would be encouraging people who know things to come forward and talk to the police.
Councilor Clingan.
Madam President, I want to thank the DA again for coming up here. This is really gracious of you, and obviously congrats on solving this case, and thank you for that. And just to my colleagues who said nice words, I appreciate it, but it really has nothing to do with me. This isn't something I want to do. This isn't something that, any of us want to do. I know Kathy has struggled for years having to do these type of things, come up and speak, but we have to keep speaking for Deanna, and so we will until there's justice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being here, DA Ryan, and an item is approved, and we'll take a 5-minute recess from here.
Thank you for having me.
Meeting back to order. Madam Clerk, where were we? 6C?
Madam President, it's 6C6, item 25-0375, amending the Code of Ordinances related to compensation for elected officials that we can pick up off the table and is now before the council.
For discussion, yes. Councilor Yoon-Campin. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Madam Clerk, let the record show that Councilor McLaughlin came in at 7:05 p.m. Councilor Yoon-Campin.
Thank you. So, colleagues, the Finance Committee had a chance to discuss this, but this is obviously something that applies to all of us. My understanding is municipal compensation issues really require a 2/3 vote, even if an ordinance per se does not. So I think this is important enough that everybody be on the same page about what it is that's before us. We take a vote, let the chips fall where they may. And I wanted to just talk about what motivated me to put this in, how it actually works, and some of the issues that we tried to address and how we wound up landing on this language. So the last time that the Municipal Compensation Advisory Board made a recommendation on the salaries of elected officials before this year was 9 years ago. The salaries for every elected official have been frozen since then. There is no other job in Somerville that I'm aware of that has not seen a pay raise in a decade. The cost of living increases every year. If you don't increase pay with that, it's effectively a pay cut. So this year, the Compensation Advisory Board came back with the exact same recommendation as they did 10 years ago. I don't fully understand that, but that was the recommendation. If it was the right salary 10 years ago, I just don't understand how the recommendation now is effectively a pay cut. That all said, I think it is a matter of basic public fairness that everybody who works for the city should see a modest pay increase every year. So what this proposal does basically is it says every year there's an annual raise to match inflation up to a maximum of 2%. Initially, the hope was to have a ordinance that would tie this to the rest of municipal staff. So if no one else got a raise, we certainly wouldn't get a raise. And only in a year where they did get a raise would we. The issue is that accidentally basically creates a conflict of interest, right? Because say there's a year where for budgetary reasons no one's going to get a pay increase. We now have a conflict of interest because we want our pay increase, so maybe we're going to give everyone else a raise just to get our own raise, right? So that's the conflict of interest. So we wound up striking that. And I just want to say very clearly that at any year, the city council can forego the annual increase for any reason. At any time, you can always vote on what the next council salary will be. So also, what this ordinance does is it says in any year where the Municipal Compensation Advisory Board actively makes a recommendation, the ordinance tells us to defer to that. This approach, we're not inventing this. Other communities do this in the state. I believe it's fair to have it here. And my hope is that the advisory board makes recommendations more frequently than every decade. I would just say as a last point, some people have said, well, but if you compare us to other communities, and that's what the advisory board did, we're still, looking good compared to those communities. The issue, in my opinion, is that the reason other communities don't raise their own salaries is because it's this gnarly political situation where it's basically no one wants to do that. It looks bad and you worry about the negative attention. So yeah, we're all kind of stuck in the same situation. I just don't think that's fair, basically. I don't think that we should be like every year getting a slight pay cut. So that's what this is. I think it requires 8 votes to go into effect. I'm not whipping votes, this is obviously, people should vote however they feel. I think this is basic fair. I think the public would understand why, and that's what's before us.
Am I being punked? Okay. Then let's take Councilor McLaughlin.
One's going to speak, Madam President. I don't even want to make a speech about it, especially after what we were just dealing with. Just feels very small compared to what we were just discussing. And I want to say this is a good faith effort. I want to just say, I appreciate the counselor for putting this forward. It's not a money grab. It's a 2% increase every year. I don't think it's that bad of an issue. But just see, what stood out to me is the fact that we might be able to actually vote it down every year is a concern to me, just because my biggest issue with this, and not to, I don't want to be on a high horse. I don't want to be saying, we don't deserve this money or we do deserve it or anything like that. But my biggest issue has always been like, man, it's just not something that's a priority to me, not something I want to talk about. And to know that we're going to talk about it potentially every year is a concern to me. Like every year we might have this argument about, do we deserve this 2% increase or not? Do other people deserve it, this or that? When I first got on this job, it was before the raise. It was $25,000 a year. Got increased to $40,000, so that's a 62% increase within that 1 year. And I do think this job, I think the city, the mayor's office, or whoever came up with the numbers, didn't do us a good service, or didn't recognize the work that we do by judging it based on the hour. I don't think this is a job that you can calculate by the hour. And it's really hard to say, what do you deserve or not deserve. I do think one of the only things you can compare it to is other cities. And if you compare it to other cities, we're making substantially more than a lot of cities. And a lot of cities that have much higher populations than us, much higher budgets than us. So I just want to put that out there. I'm not going to support it. I do think, it's a good faith effort, and I don't even want to speak against it, but I know someone's going to ask me on the street, what did you think about this vote? And I like to be able to explain myself to people, and if someone comes up and says, oh, you did this, I'll at least say I didn't vote for it, but it was only 2%, so don't get too mad about it. So that's where I'm at. I'm not going to support it, but I do appreciate the effort.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. I think there may be two of us left on the council who actually did not vote for the original proposed salary increase 9 years ago, if I remember correctly. I believe former Alderman former Alderman Niedergang was the one that proposed to vote that down, and the ultimate increase was a lesser amount, if I'm remembering correctly. If I'm not, it was a long time ago. Forgive me. I really appreciate the effort and the thought that was put into this. I completely understand the argument. Where I come from on this issue, though, is that setting aside the idea that it's not fair to, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's not fair to effectively give the council a pay decrease each year by not keeping up with the cost of living. I don't think that's the most pressing issue we have in terms of being able to serve our constituents. The salary is a long way from being a reasonable salary for someone to, for this to be a full-time job, even though it very much feels like a full-time job, at least to me. And I would imagine to most, if not all, of my colleagues, but I'll speak only for myself. I think there are to the extent we're going to increase the amount that we spend as a city on the city council, I think increasing the staff, we've seen the value. I've seen the value that adding staffers has had, certainly to my work as chair of Legislative Matters, as well as the other committees that I serve on. And I think that there's discussion and discussion committee as well of how to look at options for providing other staff support for councilors. I don't know how the dollars probably wouldn't, they may or may not be in the same category, but regardless, irregardless, I should say, being here, I remain a no vote on this, just because I think if we're going to spend more money on the council, then there's much more effective ways we can spend it that will enable us to do our jobs more easily and better, and maybe at some point down the road, ease the burden a little bit. I think we're also a very long way from that, even if we are able to increase staff capacity, but that's kind of where I come off on it. But again, totally understand the argument. I share the thoughts that were shared by my colleague from Ward 1. And, to me, it's less about what I'm going to say to my constituents when they ask, but more that I really would like to see us invest the money in different areas that can help us do our jobs better.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to my colleague for bringing a good faith effort. I had raised the issue in committee that every non-union employee of the city for the last 8 years has received a 4% pay increase without fail. But you know what? This is at 2%. This is half of that. This is $800. And I think I just applaud the rationale that was laid out by my colleague, and I think as he expressed, I am eager to just take a vote and see where that goes. Thank you.
Councilor Gibbon.
Madam President, I guess the only thing I would add is I think the reason that this is at all a complicated question, personally, is because we're talking about ourselves. I just think that's what makes this difficult to do. And I would encourage all of us to imagine that we're not going to be sitting here forever. We want new people to always be coming into this job. And for the same reason that I support pay increases for all of our city staff and also all workers in the city, I hate the fact that the reason this is such a difficult conversation is because we're in this bizarre situation where we have to we have to vote to raise our own salaries. It's insane. I'm actually trying to take that decision away from us, honestly, because I think it's, kind of just paralyzing. I think every elected official is in this situation where it's perceived to be unpopular to do, even though I think any good faith conversation of it, I personally believe, is totally reasonable thing to do. So, to the extent that there are colleagues on the fence, and again, if this fails, it's fine. I'm not mad at anybody. But imagine it's not you personally, right? It's someone that represents you that you want to see them compensated for the work that they do on your behalf.
Councilor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam President. On that note, I will not be on this body with you next year. I think that whoever replaces me and anyone on this body next year deserves just to not get an effective pay cut year after year, like you've heard about. That's all I had to say.
Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Madam President. And I want to thank the good councilor for proposing this. I have to say you're one of the most prolific colleagues, that I know of. I think we should incentivize people to run for office, and so this can be one piece, one vehicle, to actually get more people running for office. So I will enthusiastically support it.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to say I appreciate the effort. I said that I thought it was an interesting idea to tie it to something, make it more automatic. I still struggle with the idea, as been mentioned, of basically us voting on our own increase. I'm hearing both sides of the argument. On the one hand, I'm hearing it's only $800, so then it almost seems insignificant. And then when you match that up against the water rate increases and so on, people, the optics of it. I wish, is there a way we could maybe we could put it on the ballot? But it would have to probably be cleaner than this, because I think if it was just an automatic 2% without the part about the one that's higher with the labor, New England, all that part of it might make it a little messy. But if the folks thought that we should see a 2% cost of living increase yearly, I think, that would definitely make it a lot, that would definitely take it out of our hands, for one thing. And Yeah, so I understand the argument. With inflation the way it's been, I mean, you could definitely consider we've had our pay cut, but I also, appreciate the fact that, like's been mentioned, some other cities just get a small stipend, some other cities do it completely volunteer, and so I'm still struggling with this idea of voting ourselves an increase. I'll listen to more conversation, and we'll see where things land.
Councilor Said.
Through you, Madam President. Again, just recognizing that this is a very awkward situation because it is about us, but we're not going to be in these seats indefinitely. And I think having the option to vote every year sets a really good precedent. And we're talking about the cost of living adjustment. This is like the most basic thing that I think we should be discussing. And hopefully one day we can talk about being compensated appropriately for the work we do. And it would just point out that a lot of us, this is our only job. Not that $800 makes a big difference, but it is my only job, and my constituents know that, and I'm doing it full time. And I think this is just, I think my constituents know what we're doing. Our constituents all know what we're doing, and this will, again, have more people, not that it will make the job like any different, but I said this before, I want to see more people, more women, more single parents, more just people in our community wanting to do this job. They're certainly not going to do it at $40K a year, but I really believe this is the beginning of a very awkward conversation. Let's just say it. It's awkward, but we have to start somewhere, so here we are.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say for the record again, I hear what Councilor Said is saying, but I have a differing opinion about the full-time versus part-time, and whether or not that would attract other people into the job. I stand and say that I have a full-time job that I could never walk away from because that's my lifeline to that's how I survive. And I wouldn't have run for office if I had to walk away from my long-time job in order to do this. I think it opens the door for what has always been people that kind of make their own way and don't have a 9-to-5 job. That no one's unless they can open doors, after a few years hiatus on a council and then go back. It's either going to be for stone steppers, like people that want to become state reps and then senators, or it's going to be for people who are independently wealthy. I just don't see it working out the way that people think it will. And I also think once it is fully full-time, you will then have people in search of problems, in search of solutions type of thing. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Looks like we're ready to take a vote on this. Madam Clerk.
Madam President, thank you. Since this item was severed, just a reminder that it's potentially 3 votes, starting with approval of the amendments to Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 3 of the Code of Ordinances related to compensation for elected officials. On the item, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Kempen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
No.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
No.
Councilor Klingon.
No.
Councilor Davis.
No.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
No.
With 6 councilors in favor and 5 opposed, the item does not pass.
Councilor Ewan-Kempen.
No, that's all. Yeah, I was just going to say, normally an ordinance only takes 6. This one takes 8.
All right, which brings us back to the committee report.
Yes, indeed. That is item 6C, the report of the Committee on Finance, meeting on April 8th, 2025.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to move to sever item 25-0456 so that we can discuss it now.
Okay.
Item 6C9, item 25-0456, is a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $160,000 from free cash to the Department of Public Works Repairs to Buildings account for fabrication and installation of courts at Founders Rink.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank the Chair of Finance and the members for taking up this item again this week in committee. This week, right? Tuesday. And you know, particularly for flagging it initially and taking it back to continue the conversation. I appreciate the report that was provided. Sounds like some recognize, acknowledge the work that was put into by the folks in the administration and Public Works to respond to the financial questions that were posed. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to look at this. And I'll start by just repeating a brief bit of what I said 2 weeks ago when the item was severed previously, and it was before us, which is that an ice rink is a recreation facility. It is a recreation facility that is usable when we have the least amount of functionally usable recreation space, other than when we're sledding or taking a winter walk or whatever. In those cold months, we don't have as accessible the fields and outside play spaces and parks to as many folks as we do in the summer. So to me, it's just really a critically valuable asset that we have as a city and that's not even to begin to get to all of the things that we heard from folks last week about the opportunities to increase equitable access to sports like hockey and other ice sports and other uses that having the capacity of this rink used to enable us and used to facilitate us to pursue, and we heard how directly those were curtailed by not having the ice down this past winter. I received a text right before the meeting tonight that said, and to be clear, I have no problem with playing pickleball at the rink in the summer. It sounds like a great idea, other than when it's 100 degrees and might actually be a little too hot because it's also not functionally air conditioned, but we'll set that aside. They said, would you really want to be playing pickleball in an unheated metal building today or yesterday? Probably not, but that's not for me to say. At the end of the day, while I again appreciate and no knock in any way to the response from the administration, they responded to the questions that were asked. I'm not super confident that what we heard was responsive to what so many of the folks that came to speak 2 weeks ago were asking, which was, please ensure us that we'll have this facility to use for a variety of recreational purposes this coming winter and in future winters. We learned that the floor can be taken up so that the ice can be laid again in the winter, but we didn't hear that it's going to be, and we didn't hear that there was a plan for that to happen. We did hear what it might cost. And so I would say two things from a financial standpoint, because that is sort of the context with which this item is currently sitting. The first is that we also have the choice of just leaving it as an ice rink and not spending the money on the whatever Florida converted it. I don't know the answer to why can't we just do what we've done in the past, which allowed summer use for not ice purposes and then put back the ice. I'm sure there's some very good reasons for that, and I'll just stipulate to that. I don't necessarily need a response, but we did this before. But if we're concerned about cost, maybe just let's keep using it for recreation during the time of year when we most desperately need recreational spaces. So that's one option. Just use it for an ice rink. That's what it was built as. It doesn't need to be turned into a state-of-the-art pickleball multi-use facility in the summer. That said, I love the idea of turning it into a state-of-the-art facility in the center in the summer and spring months. And I think that there's sort of a premise with which some folks might look at the numbers that were presented and the purported cost that it would be required. And I read a lot of emails today suggesting that maybe those numbers we're a bit on the conservative side. I can say directly that years ago, I paid more for an hour to rent Founders Rink than the number that was presented, but maybe the cost to rent ice has gone down. I don't know. Haven't rented it in a long time, but I know I paid more many years ago for Founders Rink. But also, it's okay to spend money to maintain recreational facilities that can be used for multiple different purposes. Like, we don't have to make money on these things. You know, I think back to not to go too much on a tangent here, but to one of the initial conversations about composting. And I noted in our meeting last week that it's been 10 years since we started having that conversation, and it was before I was on the council. And when I first finally got to dig into it in a committee meeting, when the administration came back and said, we can't do it, it turns out it's going to cost us too much money. Or we weren't going to save any money. It's actually going to cost us money. And I thought, wait, but we're not trying to make money on this. That's not the point. It's because there's lots of good reasons to do composting. There are lots of good reasons to maintain great summer, fall, spring, and winter recreational opportunities. So it's okay if it costs us money. It doesn't have to be a net zero analysis. The fact that we can rent an ice rink and actually bring some revenue back in, perhaps more than the conservative numbers that were shown, or perhaps not, is great. But it doesn't need to be a revenue generating facility. The value that we get out of it is that we have these uses for kids, for adults, for everyone in between. And so I certainly won't be voting for this right now because I have no confidence that there's a plan to lay ice this winter. And until I hear that there is, I will argue as strongly as I can to try and encourage my colleagues to join me in not voting yes for this right now. So I would suggest that perhaps we consider sending this back to a committee, perhaps not finance, perhaps the committee that used to be, part of which, the purpose of which used to be the youth committee, which is now housed in our equity committee that serves a number of different issues and topics, and for a discussion of let's talk about a plan to enable this multi-purpose recreational facility during the cold winter months to ensure that will happen, and if so, we can take whatever procedural steps are then required to approve the money for that. But that's what I'd like to see happen for this, because I am in no way confident that we have a plan to lay ice this winter, and I will not vote for anything that keeps that from happening. Thank you.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Madam President. I fully support this idea. I won't be, meaning Councilor Davis's suggestion to send this to equity. I'm happy to take it in equity. I would like to change the title of equity to Equity, Vulnerable Population, Seniors, and Hockey Enthusiasts, because now we have 3 to 4 items on hockey, which I'm still happy to have. And I also want our intramural girls hockey teams in Somerville to happen as well. That work's being done in equity already. So we still have issues where we don't have ice, where we have these ideas where our residents are telling us they very much want to keep hockey alive year-round and expand, widen the tent. And I am in no way comfortable shutting this, going forward with a plan that shuts that process down. I can't support this item. Let's talk it out, come up with better plans, and get some confidence that there is a firm plan. Let's talk about it in equity. I'm happy to take it in.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. I support sending it to equity as well, and this is probably the most divisive vote I would have had to take tonight, so I'm happy to kick it down the rink. I'll do, what's that, icing. Let's do an icing violation on this and just kick it to the other side of the rink. But I really do want to give credit to the city for trying to come up with a solution. Like, they are trying to build a multi-purpose facility because there is a lack of activity space in the city. There's only so many places to do it. We have 2 ice rinks. They're trying to figure out a way to come up with a solution. So I don't want to vote against the money. I don't feel good about voting for it right now. And I'm sure this probably has come up in conversation. If not, maybe I can just field my ignorant question and have it brought up in equity. Do they need floorboards at all? Like, why can't we just not have ice when it's not wintertime and have a full use? That rink used to be an outdoor concrete ice rink. It was an outdoor hockey rink, so there was no ice on it. If it's not being used for ice, do we really need floorboards? Can people just do things on the concrete? Can you have a multi-purpose facility without ice when they're not doing hockey or other skating activities, and then we'd save money and get what we're trying to get at? So I don't know if that's been brought up, but I figured I'd just field that question for further discussion later.
I see Councilor Yoon-Kimpen, then Councilor Mba, then Councilor Burnley. Councilor Kling.
Thank you, Madam President. My view on this is super simple. I would love to vote for this as soon as we are assured that there will be ice this winter. That assurance has not been made. If someone wants to come to the microphone and make it right now, I'll vote tonight. Otherwise, I'm not.
Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank Councilor Davis for that thoughtful, remarks. I think I'm interested in seeing a multi-purpose use, and also the right committee for it to go is equity as well, because like Councilor McLaughlin said, space is a premium for the city, and so it would be nice to integrate instead of, like either nullifying one group, and it's something that is possible if it's cost. Yes, it costs. Recreation also comes at a cost, and we are a diverse community, and it's good that we actually create space for every kid to thrive. So yeah, I think I appreciate like your thinking on this. And when I spoke to the DPW commissioner at first, I think one thing that I understood was that there are two rings again, and it seems like it's not, they wouldn't be losing time for ice, but I still kept wondering, like, they're not losing time for ice, but there was ice time here. So would that go away? Like, it's like, are we keeping, is it an add-on, or you're gonna eliminate that and, let them focus on the other ring? I think it's Veterans Ring or something like so. But I guess it's something that we should strive to continue to expand, not shrink activities. So thank you.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, like my colleagues, I received emails from advocates around this item urging me to vote no on it until we had a firm plan that could enable the all year-round usage of it, including in the winter. I was looking forward to that no vote. I've made a no vote on this already. I was happy to do it again. And to that point, through the chair, a procedural question for Councilor Davis, just because he's a holder of procedure oftentimes. This isn't our item. We don't have the ability to amend it, correct? So if we know that to do the plans that have been proposed, it'll need to have more money on it, effectively, this item cannot accomplish the goal that advocates have urged us to. So I guess I'm curious from a procedural standpoint, since we know this item, if it does not have our support, cannot actually do the thing that we want it to do, why not just vote it down and then put forward an item, a separate item to actually have that discussion in equity?
Councilor Klingon, then Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President.
Was that directed?
Yeah, it was
okay.
Through the chair to Councilor Davis, I said.
Councilor Davis, would you like to address that before we move on?
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to the good councilor at large. Fair point, excellent question. My thought was, as I said, sounds like a great idea to expand our uses in the summer, taking on faith that we need this flooring to do so, and I think, as I said, that's an open question. My thought was, let's keep the conversation rolling and try and come up with something. I would anticipate although I suppose there's many different ways it could happen, that perhaps a revised item might be submitted, or an additional item might be submitted, or some other assurances, for the cost to storage, or a plan for storage, such that we would get comfort. But again, my thought was just, rather than just vote no, let's keep the conversation rolling so we have an item in committee that we can focus, because overall it sounds like a good idea. I'd love to have both if that makes sense and if there's a way to do it. So that was my thinking, Madam President.
Councillor Klingon.
Madam President, through you, I also support either sending it to Equity Committee, or if somebody can come up here right now and guarantee ICE. I second Councilor Ewan-Campin's comments. I guess my only question, and maybe somebody can answer this, and I don't remember these conversations happening during the finance meeting, but if it is a cost issue, like it seems like we have a lot of people from the community that are hoping for and relying on this ICE to be in play in terms of the different activities they have. So if it's like a cost factor, like can the city get an estimate of running the numbers to see if we would, break even or even make money off putting down ICE and then renting it out for those 4 months out of the year? Or is that already been figured, or no? Councilor, through you to Councilor Wilson.
Councillor Wilson.
Madam President, I was going to make another point, but since the question came this way, yeah, there was in the memo, they looked at, the memo looked specifically at a model where we are operating this ourselves as we used to do. It's far more likely this would be done through a third-party operator, which had been happening there, and that's where the approximate cost I mentioned of $85,000 net per year would come from, because we would receive the cost outlay would be about $120,000 a year to the city. We'd recoup about an estimated $35,000 of that based on previous levels of compensation from the third-party contractor for the privilege of operating the ICE for us.
Councillor Klingon.
Okay, well, I mean, we lay out, money for a lot of really important things that benefit the community. So, I mean, if it's about saving that differential, I would argue that, like I said, that's money well spent in my opinion. So happy to support it going to equity.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. I think we know our path forward on this. I just want to make sure to emphasize to everybody who has high hopes about this that our action here makes absolutely zero difference into whether or not there is going to be ice on the Founder's Rink this winter. That's going to be an administrative decision, and if the mayor decides that that's not what she wants, then there is not going to be ice on that surface. So I appreciate it. I'm happy to vote against it as well. But I just want to make sure to set everybody's expectations who is expecting a turnaround on this. I'm hopeful, but our action as a council cannot guarantee one of those outcomes, whether we voted to approve it or reject it. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Madam President, to Councillor Burnley's question about, why not a different item with different figures, the costs from this will be seen in FY26. So it'd be a question for the FY26 budget. And to Councillor Scott's point, yeah, we certainly can't compel anyone to do anything in the FY26 budget. I do think there is a value in getting a public commitment from the administration to do this. The public will then be able to hear that and expect that in the FY26 budget.
Councillor McLaughlin.
The final thought, Madam President, is again, I think we should send it to committee, because even if someone got up here and guaranteed there'd be ice, I'm kind of interested in the overall plan too. And this is our opportunity to get our voice in a multi-purpose facility in the city.
Councillor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. One quick question through you, probably through you to Councilor Wilson. There's probably a memo about this. Do we lose money on Dilboy Pool, or do we make money?
Councillor Wilson.
Madam President, through you, we subsidize on Dilboy Pool that we own and operate. We definitely subsidize it, not to the tune that we subsidize Ginny Smithers Sanders Pool, which is about $700-some thousand a year at this point. But yeah, we do subsidize Dilboy Pool.
Thank you, Madam President. That's just to juxtapose my point about the ice. You know, if it was a financial concern, certainly this doesn't sound like it would, for what we're getting, a lot of money. Sounds like a bargain. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, no, definitely supporting sending to equity or hoping that somebody comes through the door in any moment now.
Sounds like we are going to send this to equity. Next item.
The item now before the council is item 6C, a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting on April 8th, 2025.
Councilor Wilson, any additional comments?
Madam President, I think we've said it all.
Okay. Committee report is approved. Next item.
And Madam President, that places 2 items before this council for a roll call vote. The first of those is item 6C12, which is 25-0542, a request of the mayor requesting approval to appropriate $76,787.19 from the Medical Marijuana Stabilization Fund for the salary and fringe of the Prevention Services Coordinator for fiscal year 2026. On that item, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved. And the next item is item 25-0601, a request of the mayor requesting authorization to bond $9,750,000 and to appropriate the same for a portion of the costs associated with the development of the Clarendon Hill Phase 2 housing project. On that item, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved.
Great.
And the next item is item 6D, a report of the Committee on Land Use, meeting on April 3rd, 2025.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. We did meet at that time, and we discussed 2 items. One, I will say, we first introduced our new land use analyst, Samantha Carr. And in order to give this report, I think I'm excited that not only do we have a new land use analyst, but we apparently have new reporters in this city, because someone did a very nice write-up of this committee meeting, which I'm going to use as my report right now. So we tabled a discussion about Union Square zoning from Mid-Rise 4 to Mid-Rise 6. We're going to keep that in committee. But then we had a conversation about transit-oriented upzoning from Ms. Carr. The centerpiece of the meeting was a presentation by Ms. Carr, the new land use analyst. She offered potential for increase in density and mixed-use zoning near transit hubs as a way to address affordable housing and maximize the impact of the Green Line stations. Carr presented case studies from Texas, California, and Mount Vernon, New York, showing how other cities implemented their smart codes and tiered density allowances in proximity to transit. She also discussed recent changes in Cambridge to allow 6-story buildings and with affordable thresholds being met. Using the city's own zoning history, Carr identified several areas such as Davis, Gilman, Ball Square, East Somerville as ripe for upzoning based on previous attempts. And then we had a brief discussion. Council members responded enthusiastically to her approach. Councilor Ewan-Campen urged the committee to reflect on whether long-delayed neighborhood plans are worth waiting for, or if it's time to act now with available zoning tools. He emphasized the need for data on how well the current zoning is working, especially in terms of permitting housing from the 2019 overhaul. Councilor Davis supported the idea of density bonuses as a way to leverage more affordable housing and open space, referencing Mount Vernon's example of a 15-story podium, that's Mount Vernon, New York, for 15-story podium towers tied to community benefits. He also emphasized the need to preserve small businesses while increasing height and density. Councilor Ewan-Campen and Councilor McLaughlin, they incorrectly attributed Councilor Scott, who was not present for the meeting, raised the issue of neighborhood plans again, with McLaughlin arguing that relying on those alone lead to endless delays. Instead, he suggested in pursuing a middle ground approach that would allow for incremental upzoning in key areas without needing years of planning. So we're going to discuss next steps. I wanted to give a full report to all of you because I plan on doing this every few weeks, having a conversation about upzoning, giving everyone an opportunity to weigh in, and then eventually we'll come up with some actual amendments, some plans that we can present to all of you. So I submit this committee report to be accepted.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you for that, and thank you. I wasn't present because I'm not on land use, but I am hoping to make a special guest appearance next time we talk about Summer Nova zoning. Thank you.
Okay, committee reports approved. Next item.
Item 6E is a report of the Committee on Legislative Matters, meeting on April 1st, 2025.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee did meet on that date. All members were present. We talked about essentially 3 topics. One are the long-awaited amendments to our tree ordinance. That discussion was an excellent discussion. Most of the, effectively, these are recommendations that were put forth by the Urban Forestry Commission. Did I get that name right? Now I'm completely blanking on it. Chris was here earlier. So I want to acknowledge and appreciate the work that went into taking those recommendations and converting them into changes. A good lesson, though, in how slow municipal government works for reasons. But we're very grateful to have them. The discussion, so everything was left to committee, so spoiler alert. A couple of points that I think are worth noting. One of the recommendations was to change the way that we approach a waiver for residents who live on at the property. Currently, there's a full waiver that could be applied for, and the waiver would be otherwise, the requirement would be to either plant replacement trees or make a payment. I remember Councilor McLaughlin, my recollection, years back when we were discussing this, noted that whether or not you agree to this, that we included that because otherwise we probably weren't going to get this done for a long time. And I at least as one council member sort of agreed to go along. The recommendation was to effectively change that 100% waiver to a 90% waiver. And so those are part of the changes. The thing that we talked the most about are the enforcement mechanisms. The current ordinance says that a stop work order can be put into place. That has been removed effectively because we've been told that we can't do that. The building code is very strict, and a stop work order is a specific thing under the building code, and building code doesn't address trees, and so we can't stop the building of something because they've done something to the trees. As a point of frustration for the chair, myself, and I did ask for some clarification, and that's one of the things that we'll be taking up next week when this comes back. I'll characterize that as something that they're probably right, but I still don't like the answer, and I just want to make sure that there's no other stone that we can look under to find more enforcement tools. And there may actually be a few additional tweaks we can make, my understanding from our legislative and policy analysts. So we'll hear about that on Tuesday. The other item that we discussed at length was changes that the administration proposed to the Committee on Energy Use and Climate Change, one of which is to rename the committee to have less words and be less of a tongue twister. I won't go into a lot of detail on that. Folks can read the amendments. It would expand the committee, make it a little more, reframe the way it's described. We did have some questions and some clarifications that we requested, and so we will take that up again next week. And then finally, a surveillance technology impact report for technology the school department wants to use, specifically for coaches of our varsity teams in the high school building. They did an excellent job, but I found a few things that were maybe a little not as clear as they probably should be, and might cause folks to raise questions, so they're going to go back to sharpen the pencils again and bring us a revision of that. But I'm grateful to the work that went into that. And with that, I request that the report be accepted as submitted.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, I don't serve on that committee, so this is my chance to have some input regarding the huddle camera. I own a trace camera very similar to that. I found it interesting reading that committee report that it was stated that it does not record audio. I do not believe that to be the case. I believe it does record audio. I just want to state that for the record. Still great technology, support that's being used, but that's an important clarification. Audio is recorded with these. At least I don't recall any setting to not record audio with trace.
Okay. The committee report is approved. Next item.
Item 6F is a report of the Committee on Open Space, Environment, and Energy, meeting on April 7th, 2025.
Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee met on April 7. Discussion was around key environmental infrastructure priorities. We focus on the ongoing initiative to address invasive plant species through the proposed creation of dedicated outreach and removal. Though fiscal constraints for fiscal year 2026 prompted exploration of interim solutions, members expressed concern about implementation delays and stressed the importance of multicultural public education and community engagement. The committee also reviewed updates on Massachusetts clean energy goals, some of its electric grid modernization and capital project planning. Eversource representatives discussed supply chain challenges, cost implications, and load growth strategies, assuring that substation capacity is sufficient for the next decade. While the rate increases are not expected, committee members raised concern about long-term affordability and equity, particularly following reductions in the Mass Save program budget. With that, I ask that this committee report be accepted as submitted.
Committee report's approved. Next item.
Item 6G is a report of the Special Committee on School Building Facilities and Maintenance, meeting on March 31st, 2025.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The committee did meet on that date. All members were present. We discussed a number of items, got an update on the Winter Hill School. I won't go too much into that. Folks can read the minutes. We also heard from Director Raish on the potential renovation cost for the Cummins School building. It would be a lot. We talked a good bit of time about the Ginny Smithers pool, aforementioned this evening, which at least the last time I checked remains closed indefinitely due to chemical imbalance, if I got that right. There were a couple of items that were submitted at our last meeting regarding the pool, and I've put those on the agenda for this coming Monday for this committee's meeting. We're going to have pool talk. So we kept these items in committee. No, I'm wrong. Let me correct myself. There were two items two motions I made in committee that are in the report that I would like to do whatever we need to do to make sure they go back to committee so that I can add them to the agenda, because we kept the pool items in the agenda, and we're going to have pool talk next week. Sorry for the misstep on the first one. So Monday, pool talk. And then finally, we talked about, we heard from Colin Ziegler, who is no longer the rat czar. He is, I want to make sure I get it right. Where is it? Environmental Health Manager. I'm sorry, Mr. Ziegler, I can never remember. Rat czar is just so catchy. Anyways, knows his stuff and presented a really excellent slide deck and presentation on rodent mitigation strategies in the school systems. I highly recommend, if people are particularly interested in this, and I know a lot of folks probably are, go back and watch that meeting. The slides are attached to the agenda. And they really have made changes to the system of notification, of tracking, to streamline, to remove redundancy. It was an impressive presentation. How effective it will be, because those little buggers are stubborn, but that remains to be seen. But I think it was generally speaking, I will speak for myself, like I received it favorably. I thought it was an excellent presentation, and I'm glad to hear that. I was glad to see the work that they're doing to change that system. We had a brief conversation about tracking system of 311. There was a little bit of an agenda setting glitch where the partner committee from the school board didn't have that on their agenda, so we're going to put that one back on the agenda for Monday as well. Or it already is on the agenda, so we can have a further conversation on a prioritization and tracking system of 311. So tune in for that, either before or after pool talk. With that, I request that the report be accepted as submitted. And if there's any actions that need to be taken to get those items back to committee, Madam Clerk, please tell me, but that's what I would like to have happen. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Clean.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I do have an update on the pool. I'm surprised the administration hasn't come up here to talk about the update, but because I did hear from some contacts at DPW that, and I'm really grateful that the DPW stepped in and took control of the situation. They're actually, they've emptied the pool and they're doing their, they do the chemical something or other, they scrub it down. Basically the same work that they usually do in August, so I don't know if that would trigger that maybe we don't have to close it down this year. Maybe we can stretch, I'm not sure. But needless to say, I did go a little, I got a little heated over the pool stuff because I thought that we were discussing the orders that a couple of you had put in last week. I didn't realize that we were discussing an order that Councilor Strezzo put in like a month ago, and I saw in the memo that the pool's been closed since February 27th, and I just, I was thinking by the time pool stuff gets to my ears, I don't have any little ones anymore, usually that means it's, it's bad. And I'm thinking, okay, a couple days, the folks are probably mad. They weren't alerted properly that the pool was going to be closed for a couple days. Then when I found out it had been closed for a month, I might even use the word cover up because I think it's probably a situation where somebody was like, oh, we're gonna get these chemicals in order. I don't know what's happening with that pool. Who runs the pool over there? I honestly don't know, and I don't know if that pool, all the pools need to go back under DPW control and just let recreation focus on programming, because between the $250,000 mistake at the Dilboy pool when it wasn't properly winterized and it cost us $250,000, I don't know what's happening, and the director did not show up to the meeting. And I think it's unacceptable. I mean, a month, people, Councilor Said was telling us how she was getting emails about the swimming lessons that were upcoming, and she knew full well the pool was closed, and they were still sending emails about these swimming lessons. So, the reason why I think I didn't hear about it sooner is because what's been said to me is that I think people have fatigue. They basically have given up on actually, Councilor Wilson said he thinks that people have just, some people take the kids to Tufts now. They're just not relying on us for that pool, and I think they've just given up completely on the reliability of that pool. So that's really unfortunate. And it says a lot about the way we can run things, and then we're talking about the skating rink, about the half a year that Rec's going to run the skating rink. I just don't know what's happening, but I am happy to say that the pool's been drained and it should be refilled and hopefully back online henceforth. We'll get an update on Monday, but there is progress.
Councilor Scott.
I just want to reassure my colleague from Ward 4 that not everybody's given up on it. My kids ask me every day when swimming lessons are going to start again. Thank you.
The airport's approved. Next item.
Item 7.1 is a request of the mayor, requesting ordainment of an amendment to Article 2 and 10 of the zoning ordinance to revise definitions and the green score calculation of columnar trees.
Send this to land use for the copy to planning board, please. Next item.
Item 7.2 is a request of the mayor, requesting approval of a deed, maintenance license, and maintenance easement for 808 Windsor Street.
We'll send this to finance. Next item.
Item 7.8.
Councilor Gibbon.
I'd like to waive the readings of items 7.8 through 7.13 and refer those to CAPM, please.
Refer those to CAPM. Next item.
Item 7.14 is a request of the mayor, requesting approval of the surveillance technology impact report for Huddle Focus cameras.
Send this to legislative matters. Next item.
Item 7.15 is a communication of the mayor proclaiming that the week of April 5th through 11th, 2025 is the week of the young child.
Madam Clerk, will you read that proclamation, please?
I will indeed. Give me 1 second. Whereas, through our declaration of One Somerville, every child, we unite around our commitment to equity and our collaborative approach to supporting all children and youth in our city. And whereas we recognize and honor the people, programs, and policies that support young children's development, and whereas all young children and their families deserve access to quality early childhood care and education, now therefore be it known to all those present that the mayor of the city of Somerville respectfully proclaims April 5th through 11th, 2025 to be the week of the young child.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Today is my son's birthday, so it is the week of my young child. I particularly love this one. That item's approved. Next item.
Item 7.16 is a communication of the mayor proclaiming that the week of April 21st through 25th, 2025 is Community Development Week.
That item is approved. Next item.
Item 7.17 is a communication of the mayor conveying the appointment of Lisa Ann Davidson to the Affordable Housing Trust.
We'll place that item on file. Next item.
Item 7.18 is a communication of the mayor responding to item 25-0482, a home rule petition to establish a charter for the city of Somerville.
We'll place that item on file.
Item 8.1 is an officer's communication from the Retirement Board notifying this city council of a vote at the May 29th, 2025 meeting regarding a 2025 cost of living adjustment for eligible retirees.
A COLA. We'll place that item on file. Next item.
Item 8.2 is an officer's communication from the Deputy Director of Human Resources conveying the civil service signing list for certification 09897.
We'll place that item on file. Next item.
Item 8.3 is an officer's communication from the city clerk conveying block party licenses issued.
Nice. We'll place that item on file.
Item 9.1.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to waive the readings of items 9.1 through 9.47, as well as 10.8 through 10.16, and ask that those be approved.
Those items are approved.
Item 9.48 is a public communication from 4 residents submitting comments regarding Founders Memorial Skating Rink.
We'll place that item on file. Next item.
Item
Madam Clerk, why don't we waive the readings of 9.49 and 9.50, place them on file with a copy of land use. We'll waive the readings of 9.51, 9.52, place them on file, please. And next item.
And the next item then is item 10.5, in order by Councilor Strezzo, that this city council convene an executive session with relevant departments to discuss the interaction between the Commission for Persons with Disabilities and Racial and Social Justice Department, and to receive an update on what steps and goals have been established to resolve the disconnect between both parties.
Councilor Strezzo.
Can we please send this to confirmation of appointments?
Yep, we'll send this to CAPM.
Yes. No?
Okay.
Madam.
Councilor Klingon.
Oh, is it inappropriate to have somebody just give us an update that's not the administration, or is that? Okay, I'd like to sponsor the chair of the commission, just to get that side of things as far as an update goes, because we haven't heard a peep from the administration since we started receiving emails about that incident. Just a brief update.
Okay.
Hello. Thank you. Chelsea Klingon, through you, Madam President. We have not had any, pardon? I'm so sorry. It's late. My name is Holly Simeone. I'm the chair of the Somerville Commission for Persons with Disabilities. We have had 2 meetings on our own that we've scheduled through the library. We've managed our own Braille embossing, and we've been using our own devices and had no problems with Zoom and posting our meeting materials. We have been able to secure future months at the library. The TAB building, since it's been taken over, there's no public Wi-Fi in that room, so it's very difficult that last time that we were there to run a meeting on our own. So I think we have found a new home, but we have had no official interactions or discussions with the mayor or a member of her team, other than some emails from the Department of Racial and Social Justice.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll just note that one, there is a similar item in CAPM that I believe that I put forward at our last meeting on this topic, and I sent it there so we could have this discussion. And to the chair of the commission's point, and to her previous asks, previously we were here essentially talking about, can we finish that meeting that was cut off the ability for the commission to do its work to actually figure out where scholarship money was going to go for students in our community, to do work around accessibility of our parks, and do other really important work that they were unable to do when the previous meeting was stopped. That meeting has since happened, and I know there was a number of my colleagues who were there, both at large and from wards. So I think that's a positive update. I will note that another one of the previous asks from the commission was to not be under RSJ anymore. And as my colleagues know, if they've checked their emails, we did get a memo forwarded to us, I believe right before this meeting, from IGA, which was sent from RSJ to the commission, which from my reading essentially implies a continued relationship there where the commission will be under RSJ. So I think that is an ongoing conversation that I would just urge the CAPM to really press on, because this is not a request that came, I think, lightly or for the first time. I remember when this commission was put under RSJ, when RSJ was created, and the chair of the commission at that time did not want that to happen and said so publicly and asked for it not to happen, as I did as well. So I would just remind the counselors on that body that that is an ongoing issue that hopefully the council can play some role in resolving. Thank you.
I see Legislative Liaison Hutter would like to address the council as well.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to come up here to clarify that the director of RSJ continues to respond to requests from commissioners from the SCPD and continues to provide relevant information needed for the continuation of their work, and that the director has clearly communicated with the commission RSJ's intent to collaborate with the commission and is awaiting a response from the commission on that matter, and that the mayor's office team has been in communication with RSJ as to the next steps for addressing this concern. So wanted just to offer that, yes, the administration has been responding to this, and as the Councilor Burnley noted, in an effort to keep this council informed of the communications of the administration and the commission, we have forwarded the memo sent to the commission earlier this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll send this item to CAPM for additional discussion. Next item.
Item 10.6 is a communication by Councilor Scott conveying budget priorities and requests for fiscal year 2026.
This item will be placed on file. Next. I'm sorry?
Yes.
With a copy to the mayor, yes.
Item 10.7 is an officer's communication from the Commissioner of Public Works and Director of Parks and Recreation conveying program and cost information related to item 25-0456, the appropriation of $160,000 from free cash to the Department of Public Works Repairs to Buildings account for fabrication and installation of courts at Founders Rink.
We pointing to?
Madam President, I suggest we send this to Equity.
Gotcha.
Have some good numbers behind this when that discussion happens there. Thanks.
Got it. Everyone started pointing at people. We'll place this on file with a copy sent to Equity, and then we'll waive the readings of 10.17 and 10.18 and place those on file.
And that brings us to the end of the agenda for the evening, Madam President.
Clerk, are there any late items? Dun, dun, dun.
There are no further items before this council.
With that, then we are adjourned. Thank you.